Kara arrived in the quiet afternoon light, carrying a small overnight bag and a hopeful heart. She had spent the entire morning imagining how the day would go. She pictured warm greetings, the smell of baked pies, and her mother calling her inside with a soft smile. She had not been home for months, and the thought of finally being with her family again filled her with a nervous kind of excitement. She parked her car at the end of the driveway, taking a moment to steady herself. The house looked the same as it always had. The brown shutters, the porch swing her father had built years ago, and the small garden full of dried autumn leaves all made her feel as if she had stepped back into an older version of her life. She breathed in slowly, telling herself that this visit would be different, that the distance she felt from her parents lately would fade once they saw her. Kara walked toward the house with careful steps, almost as if she was afraid something might break if she rushed. She remembered running along this same path as a child, chasing her younger cousins, laughing until her sides hurt. She remembered watching her mother cook Thanksgiving dinner every year, moving around the kitchen with a quiet joy that made the whole home feel alive. As she got closer to the front porch, she noticed the silence. There was no music, no chatter, no sound of dishes or footsteps inside. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Kara tried to shake off the odd feeling that settled in her stomach. Maybe everyone was resting or still getting ready for the evening meal. Maybe it was just in her head, and the moment they opened the door everything would feel normal. She shifted her bag on her shoulder and looked at the front door. The wreath hanging there was new. Simple orange and gold leaves woven in a circle. It looked nice, but it also felt unfamiliar, like something added to cover up an empty space. She reached out to knock but pulled her hand back for a second. She wanted to look calm when the door opened, not nervous and shaky. Kara took a deep breath, smoothed her hair, and stepped forward again. But before she could touch the door, she heard footsteps from inside. They were slow, hesitant, almost unsure. She waited, feeling her chest tighten. She told herself that everything was fine, that her parents were probably tired or stressed from all the preparations. Thanksgiving could be overwhelming sometimes. The doorknob moved slightly, and Kara felt a strange chill run through her. She straightened her shoulders, trying to prepare a small smile. She wanted her parents to see that she had come with good intentions, that she wanted peace, warmth, and maybe a chance to fix whatever had gone wrong between them. As the door began to open, she imagined the greeting she hoped for. She imagined her mother's arms around her, her father stepping aside to let her in, the familiar smell of roasted turkey drifting through the air. She imagined hearing someone say, "We're glad you came." She needed to hear that. She needed to feel like she still belonged here. But when the door opened only a few inches, nothing familiar came through. No warmth. No smile. No sound that welcomed her home. Kara waited, holding her breath without meaning to. She tried to lean a little to see who was behind the door, but the gap was too small. It felt strange, like the house was hiding something from her. She stepped back, trying to stay calm, reminding herself that she had come all this way because she believed things could get better. She believed that families could heal, even after months of distance and confusion. As she stood there on the porch, she felt the cold wood beneath her feet and the weight of the quiet around her. She tried to keep her thoughts steady, telling herself that no matter what happened next, she had come here for the right reasons. The house remained still, the cracked door barely open. And in that moment, as the wind rustled the leaves on the ground, Kara felt the first small hint of something she could not yet name. A warning, a shift in the air, a feeling that the Thanksgiving she imagined might not be waiting for her behind that door. She swallowed hard, kept her gaze steady, and waited for whoever stood inside to speak. She had no idea that the next few seconds would change everything she thought she knew about home. Kara stayed still as the door slowly opened wider. Laura stood there, her face tight in a way Kara had not seen before. Her mother looked tired, almost older, as if the years had settled too heavily on her shoulders. She did not smile, not even a small polite one. She just stared at Kara as if she had not expected her to show up at all. Peter stepped into view behind Laura. His posture was stiff, his eyes fixed on the floor rather than on Kara. He held onto the edge of the door, not pulling it open, not closing it either. It felt like they were holding the doorway itself as a barrier. Kara tried to speak, but the words stuck to her tongue. She had rehearsed so many things on the drive there. She had imagined herself saying hello with a bright voice, apologizing for the recent distance, offering a warm hug. But now, in front of their unreadable faces, every practiced line disappeared. Laura finally broke the silence. Her voice was low, almost flat. "Why are you here?" Kara blinked, confused. She had imagined many possible reactions from her parents, but not this one. Not a question like that. It felt sharp, like a cold wind that slipped under her coat. "It's Thanksgiving," Kara whispered, trying to keep her voice steady. "I wanted to spend the day with you." Laura's expression did not change. Peter still did not look up. Kara felt something tighten inside her chest. She took a small step forward, but Laura immediately lifted her hand, stopping her. "Don't come in," Laura said quietly. Peter finally raised his eyes, but they did not soften. They were filled with something Kara could not understand. Something distant. Kara took a step back, feeling the world tilt beneath her. Did something happen?" she asked. "Did I do something wrong?" Her voice cracked at the edge. Laura looked away for a moment, as if searching for words she did not want to say. Peter shifted uncomfortably but stayed silent. Kara felt the cold air settle around her. The porch seemed smaller, as if the house itself was pushing her away. She tried again, her voice quieter this time. "I came because I miss you. I thought maybe we could talk. Maybe we could try to fix things." Peter shook his head lightly. It was a small movement, but it felt like a door closing. "Kara," he said, his voice rough, "we're not doing this today." Kara felt the sting of those words. She tried to understand what they meant, but everything inside her felt foggy. "I don't understand," she whispered. "I just wanted to be with my family today." Laura finally met her eyes again. There was no softness there, only a thin layer of strained control. "You should go home," she said. "Now." The sentence hung in the air, heavy and final. Kara felt her fingers grow cold. Her heart thudded unevenly as she tried to process what she had just heard. "You're telling me to leave?" she asked softly, as if maybe she had misunderstood. Laura nodded once. Peter did not speak. He just stepped back slightly, as though he needed more space between himself and the doorway. Kara's breath trembled. She felt something inside her break in a quiet, painful way. She looked at her parents' faces, searching for even a flicker of warmth, a sign that this was some misunderstanding. But their expressions stayed firm, sealed, unreadable. Kara felt herself growing smaller. The porch where she had once played as a child now felt like a place she was trespassing. She took another step back. Then another. The door began to close, slowly but steadily. Laura did not say goodbye. Peter did not look up again. Kara stood there as the door shut fully, leaving her outside in the cold afternoon. The click of the lock sounded sharper than it should have. It echoed in her mind like a final answer. She remained frozen for a few seconds, unable to move, unable to think. The quiet around her grew heavier, as if the whole world had paused to watch her break. She turned away from the house, feeling her legs tremble. She began to walk back toward her car, each step heavier than the last. Behind her, the house stayed silent. No one called her back. No one opened the door again. Kara reached the edge of the driveway and stopped. She looked back one more time, hoping against reason that the door might open, that her parents might step out and say something, anything. But nothing changed. The house she had always called home now felt like a place she no longer belonged. Kara wiped her face with her sleeve, even though she had not realized tears were falling. She whispered to herself, barely audible. "Why?" No answer came. Only the soft rustle of leaves moving across the ground as the cold wind passed through. Kara reached her car and stood beside the door, unable to bring herself to get in. Her hands trembled as she held the car keys, but her mind was too full, too loud, too confused to move. She felt like she had been pushed out of her own life without warning. She looked back at the house once more, trying to make sense of the coldness she had just faced. She had imagined awkward small talk, maybe a few tense moments, but never this. Never being told to leave before she had even stepped inside. Her chest felt tight, as if something heavy was pressing against her ribs. She leaned against the car and tried to take a steady breath. Her voice shook as she whispered to herself, "What did I do? What could I have possibly done?" The more she tried to understand, the more lost she felt. She thought back to the last time she had seen her parents. It had been months ago, after a small argument that had grown into something larger. She remembered leaving their house feeling hurt but also hopeful that they would eventually reach out. She had apologized later, even though she still believed she had not been entirely wrong. But they never responded. Now she wondered if that silence had been the beginning of something bigger. She opened the car door slowly and sat down. The seat felt cold beneath her. She placed her bag on the passenger side and rested her forehead on the steering wheel. She felt herself sink deeper into confusion and sadness. Kara sat there for a long time before she finally started the engine. The sound of it broke the stillness around her, but it did nothing to ease her mind. She drove slowly toward the end of the street, her eyes blurring with tears. She tried to blink away. When she reached the main road, she pulled over again. Her hands were shaking too much for her to keep driving. She pressed her palms against her face and tried to steady her breathing. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She hesitated before pulling it out. A message from her cousin Lily appeared on the screen. "Are you going to your parents' place today?" Kara stared at the question, unable to respond at first. She wiped her face and typed slowly, "I went. They wouldn't let me in." Lily replied almost immediately, "Wait, what? What do you mean?" Kara swallowed hard and typed again. "They told me to go home. They wouldn't open the door all the way." A long pause followed. Kara watched the typing indicator blink on and off several times before a message finally came through. "I think they're hiding something." Kara's breath caught. She felt a sudden rush of fear and confusion. "What do you mean?" she wrote. Another pause. "I don't want to say anything wrong. But I heard my mom talking to your mom last week. Something about needing time. Something about not wanting any more stress." Kara read the words over and over. They didn't make sense. What stress? What time? What did she have to do with any of that? "Do you know what they meant?" Kara asked. Lily sent back a short message. "I'm not sure. But it sounded serious." Kara leaned back in her seat and stared at the roof of the car. Serious. The word felt heavy. She thought of her parents' faces, the way they looked at her as if she was a stranger showing up at the wrong house. She typed again. "Do you think I did something wrong?" Another message came through. "No, I don't think this is about something you did. I think it's about something they're not telling you." Kara closed her eyes, trying to hold on to that thought. Maybe she wasn't the cause. Maybe there was a reason behind all of this, painful as it was. But the ache inside her didn't fade. She stayed parked on the side of the road for several minutes, watching cars pass by while she felt like her world had come to a stop. Everything inside her felt unsteady. She wondered how a day meant for family and warmth had turned into something so cold. Kara finally took one more deep breath and put her car back into drive. She needed to get away from the street, from the sight of her parents' neighborhood, from the unbearable memory of being turned away without explanation. As she drove, her thoughts moved in circles. Every memory, every recent conversation, every message she had exchanged with her parents replayed in her mind. She tried to find clues, anything that could help her understand what she had walked into. But nothing made sense. She eventually reached a quiet parking lot near a small park. She turned off the engine and sat in silence again. She watched a few people walking with their dogs, laughing, talking, enjoying their day as if the world had no sharp edges. Kara felt alone in a way she had never felt before. She had always believed that no matter what happened, her parents would at least talk to her. Maybe argue, maybe disagree, but never shut her out completely. She pulled out her phone again and stared at the screen. She hovered over her mother's number, tempted to call. But she didn't. She was too afraid of hearing her mother's voice tell her again to stay away. Instead, she sat quietly, letting the weight of the day sink into her until it felt like part of her skin. She knew she couldn't stay in that parking lot forever. She knew she would eventually have to go home, even if she didn't want to. But before she left, she whispered a quiet question to herself. What is my family hiding from me? The question stayed with her, settling deep into her thoughts as the light around her softened and the day slowly slipped toward evening. Kara finally drove home as the sky faded into a dull evening grey. The road felt longer than usual, stretched by the weight pressing inside her chest. Every mile she traveled seemed to pull her farther from the simple hope she had carried earlier that day. She had imagined a warm Thanksgiving, imagined her parents opening the door and welcoming her with familiar voices. Instead, the memory of the closed door followed her like a shadow. When she reached her apartment complex, she sat in the parking space without getting out of the car. She rested her hands in her lap and stared ahead, letting the silence settle. She felt empty in a way that scared her. She had never felt this kind of loneliness before. It was not the quiet you feel when you are alone in a room. It was the quiet you feel when a part of your world is suddenly missing. She finally stepped out of the car and walked slowly up the stairs. Her legs felt heavy, almost tired from everything her heart had carried that day. When she unlocked her door and stepped inside, the silence of her apartment felt different than usual. It wasn't peaceful. It wasn't relaxing. It felt hollow. Kara placed her bag on the couch and stood still for a long moment. She didn't know what to do first. She didn't feel hungry. She didn't feel tired. She just felt lost. She went to the kitchen and poured herself a glass of water, but her hands trembled as she held it. She set it down before she spilled it. She walked to the living room and sat on the floor, leaning her back against the couch. She wrapped her arms around her knees and rested her forehead on them. For a few minutes, she didn't move. She didn't speak. She just breathed unevenly, trying to hold herself together. Her phone buzzed again. She reached for it slowly, almost fearing what she might see. It was a message from Lily. "Are you home?" Kara typed a short reply. "Yes." Lily sent another message. "I'm really sorry about what happened. I wish I could explain it better." Kara closed her eyes, her throat tightening. She didn't want to cry again, but her emotions felt too close to the surface. She typed back. "I just want to know why." Lily responded after a short pause. "I think they're going through something they're not telling anyone yet." Kara stared at the message, feeling frustration and sadness mixed together. "But why push me away?" she wrote. "Why now? Why today?" The typing indicator appeared, then disappeared, then reappeared. Finally, Lily sent her message. "I don't know. But I promise it's not your fault. I really believe that." Kara set her phone down and leaned her head back. She tried to breathe slowly, but her chest felt tight again. She felt abandoned and confused. She felt like she had been cut out of her own family without a reason. She stood up after a while and walked around the apartment aimlessly, as if movement could quiet the noise in her mind. She walked to the window and looked outside. The lights from the other buildings made the world look soft and distant. Families were probably gathering around tables, sharing food and stories. Laughing. Celebrating. The contrast stung. Kara whispered to herself, "I shouldn't be alone right now." Her voice sounded small. She went to the bathroom and splashed water on her face, trying to steady herself. She caught her reflection in the mirror. Her eyes were red, her expression tired. She barely recognized the woman looking back. She returned to the living room and sat on the couch this time. She pulled a blanket around her shoulders even though she wasn't cold. She just needed something to hold on to. She replayed everything in her mind again. Her mother's voice telling her to go home. Her father refusing to look at her. The door closing. The soft click of the lock. She hugged the blanket tighter as a fresh wave of pain hit her. "What did I step into?" she whispered. She opened her phone again and scrolled through old messages between her and her parents. Short conversations. Updates. A few warm memories. Then silence. She noticed things she hadn't noticed before, small gaps in communication that now felt heavier. She felt fear crawl up her spine. Fear that whatever her family was hiding might be worse than she imagined. Fear that she might not be included in their world anymore. Fear that the bond she thought could never break had already started to crack. Kara finally lay down on the couch and pulled the blanket over herself. She stared at the ceiling, letting the quiet fill the room. She knew she would not sleep easily. Her mind was too full, her heart too sore. As she closed her eyes, a single thought stayed with her. Something is wrong. Very wrong. And the fear of the unknown settled beside her, silent and heavy, as the night folded in around her. Kara woke up the next morning with a dull heaviness in her chest. She hadn't slept well. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the front door of her parents' house closing in her face. She saw her mother's unreadable expression, her father's silence. The memory replayed like an old echo that refused to fade. She sat up slowly, pulling the blanket around her. The apartment was quiet, but the quiet felt different today. It wasn't just loneliness. It was fear mixed with curiosity, both pulling her in opposite directions. She knew she needed answers. She couldn't go another day without knowing what was happening. Her phone buzzed. She reached for it quickly, hoping it might be her parents, hoping they might finally explain something. But it was a message from Lily. "Are you awake?" Kara typed back, "Yes." Lily replied, "Can we talk for a moment? I think you should know something." Kara's heartbeat quickened. She pushed the blanket aside and sat up straighter. Lily called instead of texting. Kara answered immediately. "Kara," Lily said softly. "I didn't want to tell you yesterday because I wasn't sure. But after what happened, I think you need to hear it." Kara held her breath. She waited. "My mom told me your parents have been dealing with a lot lately," Lily continued. Something they found out recently." Kara frowned. "Something they found out about what?" Lily hesitated. "About your brother." Kara felt a sharp jolt in her stomach. "My brother? What about him?" "He's been in trouble. More trouble than anyone thought. Your parents have been trying to keep it quiet. They didn't want the rest of the family to know until they figured out what to do." Kara struggled to understand. "What kind of trouble?" Lily exhaled shakily. "Legal trouble. Serious legal trouble." Kara felt the room tilt slightly. She placed her hand on the arm of the couch to steady herself. "Why wouldn't they tell me? Why shut me out?" Lily spoke carefully. "My mom said your parents feel embarrassed and overwhelmed. They don't want anyone asking questions. They don't want people showing up at the house. They're scared of rumors spreading. And they think you might ask too much or try to dig into it." Kara felt a sting in her chest. "So instead of talking to me, they kicked me out." Lily's voice softened. "I don't agree with what they did. But I think they're drowning in stress. They're not thinking straight." Kara rubbed her forehead as her thoughts swirled. Her brother had always been distant, drifting from one job to another, never staying in one place long. She knew he struggled, but she never imagined something this serious. "Did they say what he did?" Kara asked quietly. "No," Lily whispered. "My mom only said it's bad. And that your parents don't want anyone near the house right now. They're scared someone might show up looking for him." Kara closed her eyes as the pieces slowly clicked together. The coldness. The panic in their eyes. The door barely opening. The refusal to let her inside. It wasn't that they didn't want her. It was that they didn't want anyone. But the hurt didn't disappear just because she understood. "I'm their daughter," Kara said quietly. "I would have helped. I would have listened." "I know," Lily replied gently. "But they're not thinking the way they usually do. They're just reacting. Trying to control whatever they can." Kara felt tears gather in her eyes. She wiped them quickly. "They didn't even tell me. They made me feel like I wasn't part of the family anymore." Lily didn't answer right away. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft. "Maybe they pushed you away because they're scared you'll get hurt too. Scared you'll get pulled into the mess." Kara stayed quiet, thinking about the fear she had seen in her parents' eyes. At the time she had mistaken it for anger. But now, maybe it had been fear all along. "I'm sorry you had to find out like this," Lily said. "Thank you," Kara whispered. "I needed to know." After the call ended, Kara continued to sit quietly. The truth felt heavy, but at least it gave shape to the confusion inside her. Her brother's trouble. Her parents' fear. The secrecy. The tension. It didn't erase the pain of being turned away, but it helped her understand that the rejection wasn't truly about her. She looked toward the window, watching the pale morning light stretch across the floor. She wrapped her arms around herself, feeling a mix of sadness and fragile relief. She knew her family was falling apart in ways she never saw coming. She knew they were hurting, hiding, trying to shield themselves. But she also knew one truth clearly now. Her parents hadn't pushed her away because she didn't belong. They pushed her away because they were afraid. And that fear had built a wall so high that even she couldn't climb it. Kara let out a slow breath as she whispered the words to herself. At least now I know. The next morning arrived quietly. Soft light slipped through her curtains and rested on her face, and for a moment she forgot what had happened. Then the memories returned, slow and heavy. She sat up in bed, touched her chest, and felt the same ache from the night before. But there was something else too. Something calmer. She walked to the window and looked outside. The world seemed still. Cars were parked neatly, leaves were scattered on the ground, and a few people were walking their dogs. Everything looked normal, almost peaceful. She took a slow breath, and this time her lungs did not feel as tight. As she made breakfast, she thought about her parents again. The sting was still there, but it was softer now. No matter how hard she tried, she could not understand why they chose to treat her that way. She had always imagined holidays with laughter and warmth. She had hoped for understanding, or at least kindness. Instead, she had been pushed away from her own family's door. But now, as she poured herself a cup of tea, she realized something important. She still had herself. Her worth did not depend on anyone else opening their door for her. She had spent years seeking approval from people who rarely gave it. She was tired of bending her heart to fit into places where it was never welcomed. She sat at her small table, holding her cup. She let herself feel everything, the sadness, the disappointment, the sense of loss. But she also felt the beginning of strength, like a small flame that refused to go out. She understood that healing would not come in one day. It would take time. Maybe a long time. But she had already taken her first step by simply staying with her feelings instead of running from them. She thought about the parts of her life that still held light. Her job, her friends, the quiet moments she loved, the small victories she had earned on her own. She had built a life with steady hands, and no rejection could erase that. She remembered the way she had comforted others during their hard moments. Now it was her turn to comfort herself. As she prepared to start her day, she made a small promise to her heart. She would not chase after love that shut her out. She would not beg to belong. She would learn to give herself the same care she had always given others. She would look for people who opened their doors with warmth, not conditions. She cleaned her table, put her dishes in the sink, and grabbed her coat. She stepped outside into the cool morning air. It brushed against her skin gently, as if telling her she was still part of the world. She walked slowly, feeling each step grounding her. As she moved down the street, she no longer felt like the woman who had stood at her parents' door the night before. She felt a little stronger, a little clearer. The hurt was still there, but it no longer controlled her. She understood now that sometimes the people who hurt you the most are the ones you try hardest to hold on to. And sometimes the only way to heal is to let go. With each step, she felt a quiet courage growing. She knew she would build new traditions, new memories, new warmth. Maybe next Thanksgiving she would not be standing outside a closed door. Maybe she would be sitting at a table where she was truly wanted. And as she walked farther, she let the morning air fill her chest. She was no longer looking back at a door that had been shut. She was walking toward a future where she could finally breathe.